Welcome to this new idea. I'm Conrad Meyers, and I'm executing episode number 4, which is titled 00.03 for now. My guest with me today is artist Torreya Cummings, live from Oakland. I'm here in Vallejo, and we're looking to talk a little bit about uncertainty today and what the hell all this means. But prior to the bullshit session, I'm gonna read a quote like I always do. This time from Brian Greene, who wrote, amongst others, The Elegant Universe, and is a really good writer if you're interested in quantum physics and string theory and multidimensional universe and all sorts of really fun physics stuff, and he's really good at laying down extremely easy to understand guidelines and metaphors and analogies and references to The Simpsons, and while talking about being in two places at once and all sorts of really fun things. But I was thinking about this moment and how we're all separated, and how difficult it is to plan for things, and I was trying to find a quote that would be really good about the future. And so here's a quote from his book, Fabric of the Cosmos. Our minds seem to have access to a collection of events that we call the past, our memories, but none of us seem to be able to remember the collection of events we call the future. So it seems obvious that there's a big difference between past and the future. There seems to be a manifest orientation to how an enormous variety of things unfold in time. There seems to be a manifest distinction between the things we remember, the past, and the things we cannot, the future. This is what we mean by times having an orientation, a direction, or an arrow. Physics, and science more generally, is founded on regularities. Scientists study nature, find patterns, and codify these patterns in natural laws. You would think, therefore, that the enormous wealth of regularity leading us to perceive an apparent arrow of time would be evidence of a fundamental law of nature. A silly way to formulate such a law would be to introduce the law of spilled milk, stating that glasses of milk spill but don't unspill, or the law of spattered eggs, stating that eggs break and spatter but never unspatter or unbreak. But that kind of law buys us nothing. It is merely descriptive and offers no explanation beyond a simple observation of what happens. Yet we expect that somewhere in the depths of physics there must be a less silly law describing the motion and properties of particles that make up pizza, milk, eggs, coffee, people, and stars, the fundamental ingredients of everything, that shows why things evolve through one sequence of steps but never the reverse. Such a law would give a fundamental explanation to the observed arrow of time. The perplexing thing is that no one has discovered any such law. What's more, the laws of physics have been articulated from Newton through Maxwell and Einstein and up until today show a complete symmetry between past and future. Nowhere in any of these laws do we find a stipulation that they apply one way in time but not the other. Nowhere is there any distinction between how the laws look or behave when applied in either direction in time. The laws treat what we call past and future on a completely equal footing. The laws, even through experience, reveals over and over again that there's an arrow of how events unfold in time. This arrow seems not to be found in the fundamental laws of physics. Sorry for the misread there at the end. Yeah, so future isn't a thing, so why are we stressed about it?
It has a way of becoming a thing.
Right? I mean, so you're thinking about a exhibition in particular, right? And how to plan for such thing.
Yeah. So, I keep thinking of I think it was Mike Tyson who said that everybody has a plan until they're punched in the mouth.
Yeah. That's a Mike Tyson quote. That's a good quote.
And that is has really been sticking with me, because I tend to view our entire society as kind of a house of cards, that it's sort of amazing when it doesn't fall over.
Yeah.
But that said, you have to, show up on time when people are expecting you to, and you have to like get there. So there's planning that has to happen as if, you're not expecting any surprises.
Right.
So I have this show, I think it's, as far as we know, it's still happening. Allegedly in September.
Uh-huh.
Definitely in Sacramento at CSUS. And it's a 2-person show. It's a large space. And it's mid-April.
Mm-hmm.
So normally I would be making this work.
Right.
At this point. I'm not making this work, and I'm not entirely sure what this work is going to be, and which is why the idea of, the new idea as a sort of locating
a way in.
A way in. He's like,
right.
Yeah, I can talk about this because it's all new ideas right now that may or may not come to pass.
Yeah. I mean, what was your idea?
Well, the show is a landscape show.
Okay.
Which is funny because funny for me, maybe not for anyone else, but for me, I spent a lot of time in Sacramento and Davis before I moved to the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always, like, the whole time I was there, I was thinking, wow, everybody really likes landscape painting here.
Mm-hmm.
And I, as we have previously discussed, have, like, kind of a massive problem with landscape painting.
Right.
And so I was just like, I have to get out of here. My work doesn't belong here. There's no place, like, for me as an artist in this town where everybody is really interested in landscape.
Mm-hmm.
And so many years later, in the future, now, like, yeah, I'm having a landscape show in Sacramento.
Right.
It's going to be great.
So so you're gonna readdress landscape again, possibly in the show that might happen in the possible future.
I'm assured that it will happen in one of many in all of many possible futures.
Mm-hmm.
It might not be September. It actually has now been moved to October because the students who are graduating this spring
mm-hmm.
are having their show in September. So, which is great. Like, I'm really happy for them to have that opportunity. I'm happy to have more time to work on things.
So, but your uncertainty has frozen you in a status unknown. Like you're locked in the blinking yellow.
It could also happen in 2021.
Right.
Which is another possibility.
So what's the concern with not pulling the trigger on something? Or just that you don't want to start until you're sure that the end point is within reach?
Well, I know that I have to do something. But I am not... I also don't know, what I can pull off this summer, because a lot of the resources I would usually rely on may or may not be available.
Right. Yeah, time has stretched.
Time has stretched and compressed.
Man, isn't it the weirdest thing? So have you noticed, does it take you longer to do pretty much anything that involves leaving the house?
I mostly don't leave the house.
Right. But, like, even just the idea of gathering your things to get to the grocery store is not like, I'm going to put my keys in my pocket and go. It's...
No. Okay, I got my keys.
I got this.
And I got, like, where's my mask? And when was the last time I wore it? And what did I do? Did I wash my hands before I touched it or after I touched it? Do I need a different one?
Right.
And it feels like the bar to exit the house is just higher.
Right. And then that whole trip isn't what it once was, you know.
No.
And there's no way, you can't predict when you'll return. You know that the action will happen and that presumably you will return, but similar to your exhibition, there's no guarantees as to when this return will happen, or what
it will look like.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Right. So.
Will I come back with bread flour, or will I come back with pancake mix?
Right. What will you accept? Yeah. Will you will you see that they all of a sudden they've stocked toilet paper, and out of some oddball, like, deep panic peril, you purchase extra toilet paper that you don't quite need just yet because it may not be there next time.
Right, and you don't know.
Yeah, I was at a hardware store and I bought a $13 bottle of hand sanitizer because I haven't seen a bottle on a shelf in a month.
Right, so there it was, and you had to take the opportunity.
And as I'm looking at it, I'm like, it's gonna be a long time before I need that. But
you know, you'll probably need it at some point.
It won't go bad.
Right.
Yeah.
It won't go bad, and it's not like you're hoarding, you know.
No.
You just got the one.
Yeah, I did just get the one. I considered getting others for friends, and then thought that starts to cross a line that I don't fully want to cross. I don't want to do that yet.
And then there's the whole scarcity mindset where you're like, I don't need this now, but I might need it later.
Right.
And then I might share it with my friends, but what if I need it?
Right.
You know, and so there's that, like, it creeps in where you're like, oh, I gotta fasten my own oxygen mask first.
Right. Yes.
But where is the boundary of that?
Jeez. It's uncertain.
It's uncertain.
It's an uncertain thing.
I mean, I think what all of this has done is that it reminds us that things are uncertain anyway.
Right.
And it just removes the screen of certainty.
Right.
It's like, oh, by the way, not true.
Right. Well, I think, you know, per that quote, the little bit of scientist in all of us builds our lives on these regularities. Right. Where the expectation of how long things take based on the last 1,000 times we did them, or 5 times we did them, and what do we need? You know, how often do we need to go to the grocery store based on how long it takes and it being separated from your life? You know, I mean, you know how long food takes to make, how often you need to make food, and all of these things have been really largely tossed out the window, and seemingly there's not a way back. I think that's what I'm grappling with, is that the way back is not as focused as I wish it would be. I don't understand the way back. I don't understand where back is. Which I think similarly.
It may not be a way back. It may be a way forward.
Right.
And that is, in some ways, the hope that for a lot of people is that it's a way forward into something else that works better.
Yeah.
The question is, better for who?
Right. That is a good one. Not answerable in 1 hour.
Mm-mm.
So back to your landscape paradigm. What ideas do you think transfer? What things can you begin to prepare that you can't, that you don't have to pull the trigger on, that you can be ready to pull the trigger on physically, but the preparation can kind of happen in a different way than you're used to?
Well, I think normally my sort of idea generator process is, there's sort of 2 modes. Well, there's a few modes, but like there's oh, I had this idea and I want to see what it looks like. I want to find out what it is, and I want to work on it over a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's nice when that happens, but usually the way things work is like there's a show, there's a deadline, and like, come on, ideas, let's get in the car, we're leaving. Like, like come on, get it together. And then it's like, no, I don't know, what is this, what's happening? And then I just sort of hope for things to show up.
Uh-huh.
And then once something shows up, that's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't, like, I can negotiate with it, but mostly I'm thinking about how do I frame this?
Mm-hmm.
Because the idea is what's, like, that's what's happening. I just have to figure out how to do it.
Right.
And then in that figuring out, other things happen, and then eventually you end up with the final work. But without that, like, sort of visual, visual mental experience of like what it's going to be,
mm-hmm.
nothing can really happen. So I've been going through the period of like trying to see my way into what the show looks like, and that has been happening. But then I come back with this stuff and I'm like, okay, I have this mirror box with projection and gravel, and I know sort of what it is, but like, how does it relate to the rest of the work? Like, what's the story? What's the context? And some of it's just like figuring out how to justify what I'm going to do anyway.
Right.
In a way that makes sense for the curator
Uh-huh.
or the audience.
Have you spoken with the curator?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been having like weekly meetings where I say, yeah, I'm not totally sure, but I'll have a budget for you next week.
Oh.
But thinking through the budget actually is really helpful.
Oh, we're frozen for a second. Hold on.
I am borrowing my neighbor's internet.
No, it's not you. It's happened here.
Uh-oh.
We've had spotty internet all day. Oh, man. Well, it may still be, going. So, it's technology. It's uncertain. As of right now, it looks like it's still live. So I think I'm just digressing and just the fact that my phone can't connect to it in my little hodgepodge of technology that I've assembled here to make all this happen. But it looks like there was no hiccup, and my phone is lying to me.
Okay.
So again, another thing that we cannot trust: my phone. Fair enough.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
It's spying on you anyway.
Right. Yeah. So it's widened the shot. It looks like. That's pretty interesting. Weird.
Okay.
But it's still connected to Wi-Fi. Yeah, I can't figure all these things out. So what? We were talking about the curator, conversations with the curator, and how to kind of dig into that future.
Well, some of it is just like nuts and bolts stuff, and that's where it's this thing about the plan and the getting punched in the mouth and the having to show up on time anyway. You have to plan as if things are going to work.
Right.
And if you don't, they're definitely not going to work.
Right. But you have to.
So,
but it sounds like your practice allows for you to be able to plan and accept accept results even if they're outside of what you originally thought was an acceptable result.
Yes, I think that's fair to say. Like, I usually start out with a pretty clear idea of what I want to happen, and then I'm really excited when something else happens.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, I think that's true. Yeah, because there are variables, right? And it's like, it's nice to be surprised. And if you make something, like, I think about this with like, there's good ideas, bad ideas, and weird ideas.
Right.
So the good idea is the one where you know, like, oh yeah, that's airtight. That's like absolutely going to be a hit. It's concise. It has an argument. It's like, yes.
Uh-huh.
And then there's the bad idea where you're just like, oh no, it's never going to work.
Right.
And then and it shouldn't. And I don't, like, I'm not going to put the effort into it. And then there are these other ideas that are like, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not really sure, but it's compelling enough that it sticks with me, and those are the ones that I usually end up going for. Because the good idea, like, who needs it? You know, like, it's done in your mind. That's enough. But and that's where the uncertainty is, like, it's a productive space where it's
right.
like,
so what?
Maybe we'll see.
What makes the uncertainty of that part of your practice different from this current uncertainty?
I mean, fewer people get hurt.
When it's just you committing.
When it's just me, it's like, well, okay, that was embarrassing, but here we are. It's contemporary art. Nobody knows if it's embarrassing or not. You know,
right.
You meant it that way. But I think there is something like, and this spills over to my day job, which I don't really want to talk about a whole lot, but when everything's up in the air,
right,
that's a really good time to help influence where they land.
Mm-hmm.
It's much harder to make changes when everything's fixed. And so, like, it's hard for me to do anything right now, but to the extent that I can, I'm thinking about, you know, what do you want to put in place going forward?
Mm-hmm.
Because plenty of other people are using this as an opportunity in ways that I might not, you know, support.
Right.
So if I can also use it as an opportunity to shape, you know, my life, and I don't know. It's just it's a time when things aren't fixed, and that means there's more potential.
Do you feel like this exhibition? So how does it make that scenario different, right? So you've known about this exhibition for a year, right? Year and a half. It's been a long time. I remember we spoke about it long ago.
Well, it was supposed to happen in February, and then it didn't happen in February. It was going to happen in September. And, you know, you're right. I should have been thinking about it a year ago.
No. Well, that's not what I'm getting at. I think I'm getting at that there is a paralyzing aspect to the uncertainty being uncertain. That you're fairly certain that it's going to happen, but it's not 100% like, let's go do it yet.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, the facilities that I would use. So my studio right now is under construction.
Right.
My house and housing and studio situation, which I'm super happy to have. Is, you know, so happy. It's a mess. You know, I can't really make anything here right now. I'm still trying to make container. So that was the plan, was like finish the build out and then make the show.
Uh-huh.
And the build out is getting extended because it's hard to do anything right now.
Yeah, you can't bring a lot of people in to help. You can't move quickly.
Bring people in to help. My motivation is low.
Yeah. Are they making you wait in line at the Home Depot to go pick stuff up? Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes things difficult.
And Ashby Lumber also. Ashby Lumber has been great. I can place the order online.
Oh, nice.
They have it for me at the desk. Shout out to Ashby Lumber. But yeah, it's just like the schedule's completely screwed up. Yeah, so the uncertainty, like the show, I sort of had a plan, and then I would think about where I can make the work.
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend who's a welder who's going to fabricate something for me.
Nice.
Theoretically. And there are, like, vendors that I would normally work with are like, well, we're sheltering in place right now and we're not really essential, so we'll, do that later.
Right.
So it's hard to, like, this piece is going to involve these components. There's a whole ceramics component, which I don't know if I'll have access to the facilities to do that.
Oof. Right.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Remind me later. I know somebody with a kiln in Richmond that may or may not be able to do something if you're anxious.
We can talk about that.
But so I'm still trying to like wrap my head around like the arch here of because I totally know what you're saying about that being a freezing factor. Because we've been talking about just the fact that you can't focus in on a checklist and begin to execute the checklist. Are art brains, or is that everyone? Is everyone frozen by that aspect of inability to plan effectively? So why bother? Like, why start?
Know. I think, I always think in terms of an array of variables.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I know that I'm here and I'm going to get over here, but the way that I get there's a variety of different paths that could take, and it depends on circumstance and it depends on opportunity.
Right.
And so I tend to kind of play out all of these different scenarios and variables.
Mm-hmm.
Usually at like 4 o'clock in the morning when I can't fall back asleep.
Right.
Which actually is very useful because that's part of how I get ideas. Is if I can't fall asleep at 4 o'clock in the morning, I think, all right, let's think about this show.
Nice. That's smart.
Stop thinking about work. Stop thinking about the pandemic.
Yeah.
Let's think about this show. Oh, okay.
If I have to. Yeah, I think I like that point about seeing the end. I think that's you're a very logistics-minded person, and I feel like that it helps you excel at many things. Which I was thinking about how fearless you are at learning a new skill and doing it very well. And there's not a lot of people out there like that that are just committed.
It is something that I feel confident in.
Mm.
I can usually figure out the hiring a welder. I have welded. I'm okay at it.
Right.
I'm not great at it. I could be good at it, but it would take a lot of time.
Uh-huh.
And this way I can like pass some money to somebody who
Uh-huh.
needs it, who can do a better job faster than I can.
Right. But I guess what I was getting at is that the same skill that allows you to see the end point and the various paths to get there is the same one that allows you to see to see I'm gonna fuck that up if I don't do some research.
Yeah.
Uh, right? Like you can see,
Yeah.
I see my finger flying into the air if I don't work on this machine for a little while first before diving in.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, that's the it's a pretty exciting place to be. But I think with regards to the logistics thing, um, surely with this exhibition you can start to pluck out the things that you do know are for sure,
Yeah.
right? And then begin to assemble partial paths. It's just so much more difficult because the gaps become wider the further things get away,
Yeah.
and if things involve you actually being there, which there's a large sum of dominoes that I'm sure.
Yeah.
No, dominoes is the wrong analogy. The house of cards. There's enough cards that would need to be put in place for you to get there, but you can't do that because the bottom one's missing. It won't ever be there. Yeah, or something.
Or by October it might be more possible. Or
Yeah.
so I'm trying to think about the work that I'm proposing with a mind to like substitution. Like, okay, if I can't do this, I could do it this other way, or I could, like maybe I could cut this piece and build that piece more.
Right.
But the other component is that we're in this time where a lot of things feel very important, and this is not one of them. Like, okay, so, landscape, California history, its effects on current politics, future water rights, geologic time. I'm interested in this, but it feels a little less pressing,
Uh,
when you have for context, my brother is in LA working for the county in the Office of Emergency Services doing logistics. I'm like, oh, he's doing something like very timely and very important in a way that I am not. Not that it's a competition, but it is like, I'm doing logistics for problems I have made up myself.
right, but that's a slippery slope that you shouldn't allow yourself to get into, because the things that you're thinking about, no one is thinking about, and that by its definition has value. That's what having a new idea is. It's bringing something to this planet, to this consciousness, to this group of consciousnesses that didn't exist before, and you have a gift for that, which is why you've excelled at your career of choice to the extent with which you have, and why you have this show coming up. So stop going down that path. That's a terrible place to go. So what I was I had a Zoom, my first Zoom huge meeting last evening in in the form of a large kind of board / committee meeting for a Bay Area organization, and the conversation swirled around what we are pretty sure that we're safe. We have good focus on what we need to do, what we need to change, how we're going to do this. what can we do for others in the Bay Area under the circumstances that we all know is coming, where everything's going to go from bad to worse. And it was a strange conversation, but there were not answers and this is the, and I think that's, I'm feeling like we're all just gonna have to get used to not having answers, and I feel like we're bad at it. Well, all of us are bad at it. I mean, I think people like you and I are maybe better at it than people that think this is a hoax, right? Like, sure. Not having an answer to this doesn't mean that it's not happening. Like, that's right. The wrong choice. But not having an answer and being okay with that it's tough. It's a tough place to be. It's like silence. Nobody wants to have silence. And I'm trying to embrace one of my little notes that I took when I started this show was that silence is okay. And I don't know if I've really enacted it very much, but the idea that there would be, like, that's something that doesn't exist in web chats, really. You can't just sit for a second like you would in a normal conversation with a friend or a loved one or a business partner, where you both decide it's going to be okay to be silent for 10 seconds while you think through your next sentence. Everybody's afraid to do that because they think the video broke.
Right, their freeze.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
So it's like one of those things where I want to just allow, like, I don't want to interrupt people, I don't want to talk over them, and I want to just allow the ideas to flow. But then also, when I have something that I kind of want to get out, talk for a while and just let it be this new thing. And again, we're in the zeros still, so this is still being figured out.
Okay.
And I got my phone came back, which is why the video has been recropped and doesn't include the bookcase and the mirror that shows the clothing hanging in the corner of this office. So.
Well, I don't see any of that because I just see our screen.
That's right. You see a totally different.
I see you, and then I see me behind you.
Right. That's there. Yeah.
Later.
It's
because there's a time lag.
Of course.
So I'm in the past behind you, and I'm in the future. Well. I guess I'm in the past now because there's probably a lag from you to me, and then me back to you.
Yeah, I'm seeing. I mean, you're in
the future. I'm in the present, and then other me is in the past.
I feel like I'm looking at you being the future, and then varying degrees of pasts on the other 3 screens that I have in this room operating with me. So there's 5. Fraction, what's the word? It's not a fractal. Like, there's 5 little break-off points of this instant moment that later no one would address unless they started to think about it while listening to this part of the chat cast. Chat cast? I've been calling it a chat cast. I don't know. Is it a word? I didn't want to call it a stream. Like, it's a stream, conversation stream, chat stream.
I mean, I think of chat as like a.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Thing.
What is this that we're doing?
Is it a dialogue or a conversation?
Oof, it's not a dialogue. That's a hair too pretentious.
I know, and I am sitting in front of my
water heater.
Not to code water heater.
It'll get there. I mean, again, I think I like this. Once I have some better audio equipment, I may allow this to leave this room. But as of right now, I'm stuck in this little room that has more equipment than me at any given moment. But yeah.
I started dressing up this area because it's in the background of all of my my work meetings.
Uh-huh.
And I don't have my own internet. I'm using my neighbor's across the hall, and so this is actually my a different neighbor's utility closet. And so I brought the plant in, and I started messing with the lighting because I'm talking to people with like a home office,
right?
I'm like, oh, what's that like? I have a water heater.
Yeah, no, that's
But
good.
it's improvisation, you know. It's like you have a set of you know, there's planning and then there's improvisation,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes you have to figure out how to do both or figure out what time it is to do which.
Right. How do you combine the two? And I think we're all on our heels as to what rules to follow, because the rules that we used to follow are out the window.
Yeah. Yeah. But you do get to see a different perspective on, you know, you see people's spaces that they live in. And
Right.
sometimes maybe you don't want to have that kind of relationship. But I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
It breaks down this sort of fiction of professionalization and gets into, like, who are you when you're at home?
Right. I was listening to MSNBC on the radio. I was listening to the TV on the radio the other day, and somebody's child walked in, and it was awesome. Like, I mean, I think like there's things that are that unexpected. Like, if I described a scenario to you where a cable news anchor was interrupted by their child, you would think I was crazy. Like, if I tried just maybe 2
Right.
months ago, if I said, in 2 months you're going to be watching cable news and they're going to be interrupted by their child, and they're going to say, not right now, I'm sorry, and then go to a commercial, you would tell me that that's insane. That's an insane scenario. But I think, like, there's some pretty incredible things that you know, like things break, you know, technology breaking down, like you know, all these shows are like operating from home. You know, the Saturday Night Live where they did it from Zoom. Like, there's all this weird things that are happening that are trying to, like, take advantage of this moment and record it. And you know, I don't know. I've been telling other artist friends, you know, to embrace it and accept that it's not, if what you're working on isn't what you want right now, that's okay. Like, if it, even if it's bad, it's not. Like, that you can't think about it like that. It's the only thing we should be judging any of our art on right now is integrity, and you know, is it really worth making? You know, like, is it as good as the idea merited? It doesn't matter if it's in your practice right now, because everybody's practice is changing. You know, just like, how do you accept?
I was talking with my partner about the you know, this question of, like, you know, because there is a major crisis and it is widespread, people's priorities are changing, people's, you know, ideas about what's important are shifting, and I think some of that is good and necessary. And, you know, it's like, you know, I'm making this show and I'm trying to, like, get back into the mindset where I am engaged with these things, because it's like I haven't been paying attention to, like, geologic time for a while, because I've been focused in the, like, very, very knife edge present moment. And they were like, you know, it's everything being about the pandemic is boring.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everything is about the pandemic. Please make something else about not that.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay. You know, because it is, and in the last, you know, couple weeks, I've been able to kind of, like, get back into that, you know, other things are going to be relevant again, or at least of interest again.
I mean, I think it's hard to feel like that's true, but I also realize that it's going to happen just like this all happened. It's going to happen without preparation.
Right.
All of a sudden, things are going to just feel okay in certain ways, and it'll be as confusing as this all was. You know?
Well, that's the thing, is like, I'm not really excited about going back to, like, I've kind of gotten into a groove here.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm really fortunate in a number of ways where, like, I have a job I can do from home.
Mm-hmm.
I have a show that hasn't theoretically been canceled yet. But trying to come, like, back to some sort of unexamined normal as if none of this had happened. Like, I don't see that as realistic or something that I want to do either.
Right.
I like taking a walk in the morning, or you know, not commuting to work. It's pretty nice. Or having more flexibility about how I plan my day.
Mm-hmm.
I will not miss endless Zoom meetings.
Is that what you're buried in? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, you know, Zoom meetings with the curator, Zoom meetings with the fabricators, Zoom meetings with people at work, Zoom meetings with friends for happy hour.
Right. Yeah.
So thank you for for choosing a non-Zoom platform.
It's only out of necessity. It's necessity. Yeah, the planning tools are planning tools, I guess. When you're thinking through, you know, I mean, obviously you said yes to this and we're comfortable, like, talking about this. And it's so funny that you came back when I asked about a topic and you're like, I don't know, uncertainty seems like a pretty apt topic because of all these things that are uncertain.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's not something that I tapped yet in these first several episodes. And I don't know how this is going to structure itself still. I think I'm really excited about that. And when I bring it up to Willis is like, it's this new idea. It cannot have structure yet. It's new. It's going to be new for the foreseeable future. So, you know, right now I've locked down these several resources, like what the frame looks like, and how I shoot it, how the technology is relied upon, how I'm asking people to do this, how I'm communicating with them.
Yeah,
you know, so there's
things that work.
Yeah, but and really out of necessity to just cross some stuff, similarly to your issue, just cross a few things off the list of indeterminable, and put, okay, that's how I'm going to do that until I just, like, make an active choice that I'm going to change my mind and do it a different way.
I think in my 20s I was really concerned with like having a plan for how to do something and being prepared and having everything I needed to do the thing.
Yeah.
And then eventually I began to be able to just trust my capacity to figure it out.
Right.
And so, like, I still do love a good plan, and I do love being prepared, but I also know that shit changes.
Right.
And you might need to figure something else out. But if you can trust in your ability to figure out what is appropriate at the moment, that plan doesn't go to waste. It just gets tweaked into, you know, and you will make appropriate decisions.
Yeah.
So you've figured out some things about how to do this. When circumstances change, you'll figure out some other things.
Right. But and they all, like, I've chosen. It's so funny that you made me think about my earlier sculpture work, which was how I learned this practice of, I'm going to make these are the things that are going to be relied upon, as I don't want to make decisions. So, like, you know, settling on, I'm going to cut these to 3 lengths of 3, 6, and 9, and I'm going to do it until I run out of this material, you know. And then but then how those get assembled, that's going to happen however I choose. But it's
Right.
like this. That's I feel like that's where this is. It's like the conversation. I didn't want more than a few words about where we would take this, right? And I didn't want to have an endpoint.
Yeah.
And I only started like once you chose that topic, then I started thinking about like what's a fun quote to frame it.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that was a really good choice.
yeah, I got to get back into that. Did you ever read one of his books? Man,
No.
they're like, I remember my late uncle described it as the only book that he's ever read where he like had to like put a bookmarker and set it on the table and then just like rub his temples. You know, it's like you feel your mind like being
Yeah.
like, what? You know,
Yeah.
and it's just him trying to explain these things that are like just on the verge of human understanding, and but again using metaphors like broken eggs and spilled milk
Yeah.
when he's referring
There's a
to.
word. A friend was telling me a long time ago that there's a word in French for unmixing,
Oh yeah,
which I don't know. I don't know the word. I don't speak French, but I love that concept of you can mix something together, and then in a different language you could unmix it.
but you can't
But in
unmix
this
it.
one you can't.
No.
But in that one you could.
That's awesome. That's a fantastic thought. When we were dabbling with names for this, one of the very early ones, which I used to try to describe what I wanted it to be about, was unfully formed, and it got shot down by everybody because they're like, you
Yeah.
can't use a word that's not a word, and it's alliteration and it sounds stupid. But I'm still hung up on it, like because it's really like these I want to talk about ideas that aren't yet formed enough to talk about, and be have an audience be a part of that journey of two relative laymen trying to figure out what they're talking about. No, there's no. There's no tricks here. I don't want. The experience of watching this, I hope, is that people in their own head are thinking things that are new and not ready.
Well, I feel like part of the reason I was happy to do this was because of this show that I'm working on, as in like I'm just thinking about it a lot.
At 4 a.m. Yeah.
At 4 a.m. And starting to make spreadsheets, like I'm starting to put together a list of works, and I'm like, I have maybe made 2 of these. Maybe some of it I can recycle from old shows, or just print it larger, or
Right.
turn it into something else. But I am in that space of uncertainty, and not just about if the show is happening, when the show is happening, what the budget is, what the work is. And it's an uncomfortable place, but it's also like that's where the good stuff happens.
Yeah. Yeah. So stay on the edge there.
Yeah.
The edge of the time's arrow, right?
Yeah.
Don't let it give direction quite yet.
It needs to have some, and it's starting to happen. But it's like I'm thinking about. There's this text that I'm in the middle of reading that's published by a community college in Rockland, outside of Sacramento, and it's called something like a road trip transect through the Sierra Nevada, and it's basically like a roadside geology format. So like pull over at this mile marker and look to the west, and then you'll see this outcropping of rock, and this is from this time period, and these are the things that were happening. And so I'm thinking of the work in the show as like a transect is when you take moments, or you take samples, like you draw sort of an arbitrary line, and then you take samples from that line,
Right.
and then those samples theoretically tell you something about the points in between.
Uh-huh.
So I'm thinking of the works in the show as samples from a line that's basically a highway.
Oh, okay.
So that's like the frame.
Right.
But I have some pieces that I'm like, well, that actually doesn't work with that frame.
Right.
Like if the line is like I-80, for example,
Right.
this is not from that ecosystem. So how does that jive?
Right. That's like you just opened up like another hour of conversation here nearing
But
the
then
end.
the other thing is like, who cares about Interstate 80? It's like super, super local. It's like this, nobody in Europe is going to look at this show and say like, oh, yeah,
Right.
I-80. Like we got to get this show over to Europe.
Right. I mean, invent a map and fit your work to an invented road.
Right.
And where it's true, and where it's not. Like, you don't need to wink. Like, just let the.
Yeah.
I
mean that is the thing. Like, it doesn't have to be linear. Linear. That's linear and literal.
Yes, it sure was. Nailed it. Excellent. That's a new idea.
Things that I'm like, turning around every which way, and once that gets kind of sorted, then it'll be easier to make the actual things.
Yeah. That's amazing. I mean, that's a great place to end this, because I feel like you've made a breakthrough, at least audibly, and let us into your process a bit more.
I mean, it's still like
a new idea.
It's a new idea.
Yeah.
We'll see how it is around like the end of September when I'm installing.
Yeah, fingers crossed, or early next year.
Or next year.
Yeah, sometime in that unknown, that uncertain future that we're barreling towards, whether we want to or not.
It's all we have anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Man.
But you don't want to bet against yourself.
No, you got to just line them up, get ready to knock them down. All right, Torreya. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me on this.
That was a delight.
This fourth episode. And I'll be bugging you around your next show. This will continue no matter what, in some form.
I'll let you know what happens.
Yes. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks. See you later.
Bye. So that brings us to a close of episode 00.03 of This New Idea. Thank you for joining me. Those of you that are live, I really appreciate it. Spread the word, subscribe, and if you know anybody that wants to propose a new idea or talk about an unfinished process, please have them email me at thisnewidea@gmail.com, or through the YouTube channel, or through the Instagram hashtag thisnewidea. So thanks again for joining me, and I will see you on Monday with Christopher Reiger, my guest, at 5 p.m. for yet another episode of This New Idea.